What is going on, everyone? So in my previous video, I talked about subject interaction and how I use that as a tool to create an emotional connection between the viewer and the work through creating a sense of story. And I want to expand on that a bit in this week's video. So when I was discussing subject interaction, I was talking about how of the various examples I can find of this in my work, and I'd say maybe 30% or so of the photos I take have some degree of subject interaction. So it's not extremely common, but it's something I strive for. But of those examples, it is almost always something that I identify while in the field as opposed to something that I simply recognize after the fact. And this is important, and this gets to this week's discussion. It has to do with what's the key to recognizing this subject interaction in the field. And for me at least, the answer is just a pinch of misery. I'll explain. So I have to be in a certain mindset in the field to feel productive. And that, for me at least, usually happens by about the third or fourth day of a trip. And there's this balance that happens where in the early days of the trip, the first day or two, I just don't feel like I have a lot of energy. I don't really have a ton of motivation. It's not really until I go out and start taking in the scenery around me and start recognizing the potential of those subjects. But then by about the third, fourth day, I start to get a little bit physically tired. I do also get to be a little bit mentally drained. And I know that for people that watch the videos, it is a bit of an escape. You watch it because you want to experience some of these places. That's not always my experience in the field. The sense of solitude can be a bit draining at times, especially more toward the evening. There's a lot of physical drain when it comes to just hiking all day. At some point, usually toward the end of the trip, at some point my legs are just like, nope, no more hiking, just sit a while. So there is that fatigue, there is that overwhelming sense of solitude, which makes for more of a complicated experience while in the field. But that little pinch of misery sometimes is exactly what I need in order to recognize those subjects. Because if you feel a certain way, then you start to recognize that in the subjects that are, that you're surrounded by, and you'll see that. And I think that does come through in the work if one is, doing their job as a photographer. You feel a certain way. You see a subject and you say, hey, that looks like the way that I feel right now. I'm going to try to capture that in a way that captures that feeling. And that's really where some of that comes into play. Now, one of the examples that I used in my video about subject interaction was this photo taken in Zion. It's taken in the Big Bend area of the main canyon. And if you're to go through this area now, it's not going to look anywhere near the same, because the photo I took in 2013 of this dead, fallen cottonwood tree in a state of decay, that tree has decayed so much since then that it's almost unrecognizable. But at the moment when I took that photo, it was toward the end of my trip. I was physically worn out, and also I was coming down with a really bad cold. I was honestly fairly miserable when I took that photo. And I was hiking along this trail, and I see this dead tree. I see it looked like it was fostering life, and I just had this emotional connection with this subject that I had walked past many times because I was miserable. and I don't necessarily want the misery to come through in the photo, and I realize it probably doesn't because it's a photo of a tree, but I had a very strong feeling at that point in time, which allowed me to recognize the potential of that subject. And that's also the case for the backpacking trips. The backpacking trips are tough because I am on my feet all day long and I'm very physically drained. I'm a bit limited in terms of how many calories I can intake because the backpacking food isn't extremely caloric, but I do my best out there. But at the same point, it does start to drain me. I do get a bit fatigued after a while. But I think that is what allows me to find those subjects where you have this strong feeling one way or the other, which allows you to find those subjects and then allows you to recognize the potential right then there in the field. So in the case of my trips, usually by the 4th or 5th day is that sweet spot where start to become a little fatigued, but also recognizing the potential of the subjects. And by about the 7th or 8th day, that's just, at a certain point, my body just rebels on me. And I just want to sit down and, I don't really have the energy to pursue the subjects as much anymore. So that's just the other aspect of searching for images where you have some subject interaction and you have some degree of storytelling in them, is that extra little bit, is that little pinch of misery. And I think this is also why when I do go on the trips, let's just put it this way. I don't really do any local photography because it doesn't allow me to go into that mindset. Just to go out and take a photo for a day, it doesn't really do anything for me. I really have to be immersed in that environment, and I really have to start to have that little bit of misery that allows me to find those subjects that I have a strong connection with. But I want to thank everyone for watching. We'll see you around next time.